steak and kidney pie. Traditionally Britain's favourite pie. The meat I prefer to use is shin beef, which I have here. I've got a couple of pounds of shin beef. And the kidneys I prefer to use are actually lamb's kidneys, but you can use beef kidneys. I find beef kidneys rather strong, so I love the flavour of lamb kidneys and I love the texture of them, so I choose lamb kidneys. I've got about half that volume of lamb's kidneys, so it's about a pound of lamb's kidneys, which I've trimmed and chopped up into small pieces. And likewise with the shin beef, I've chopped that up. You can also use chuck steak and flank and brisket, but you'll need to vary the cooking times according to the type of meat you use. So the tougher the meat, the longer you've got to cook it. You'll need some flour for dusting, and you'll also need about half a decent sized brown onion, and some salt and pepper, and a few pie dishes. I've also got some pastry which I'll skillfully open and unroll. What I'm using is the shortcrust pastry base with a puff pastry top, and that makes for a rather nice pie. Because of the volume of meat I've got here, I'll be able to make 4 pies of this size, and these are lovely little pie dishes. These are available from Falcon. You can probably order them from Amazon, enamelware from Falcon. Really good. I love them, and they're rather retro and in looks, but they're still as useful as they ever were. I'll make 4 of those, but I'll make 2 of them. I'll just make, and then without baking them, I'll stick them in the freezer, and then I'll be able to just pull them out and bake them when I need a meal in a hurry, type of thing. So without further ado, let's get on. Okay, right. First of all, I want to dust my both my kidneys and my steak in a bit of flour. So a couple of spoonfuls of that, and I'll just keep a little bit by for the end, and also some, because we want the seasoned flour, so season it with a bit of salt and pepper in each case. No other flavouring to go in this. There's no garlic. We don't put garlic in steak and kidney pie. It's traditional English, and traditional English food we tend not to use much garlic. However, for the gravy, I'm making a nice beef stock, which I use the shin bone to make a beef stock, and that beef stock does have a little bit of garlic in it because it gives it a nice taste. So we'll try to keep to tradition as much as possible, but I can't resist having a little bit of garlic in my gravy. Right, and then I just need to toss that in that to coat the meat in each case. Now the kidneys, they cook very quickly, and they're ready in next to no time at all. So what I'll do is I'll just leave those like that for now, and then let's get some of this meat cooked off. So the next thing I'm going to do is chop up the onion, and we need to brown off the meat and start stewing it. Alright, enough cooking oil to coat the bottom of the pan. Not too much, don't make it too oily. And once a good strike heat has been achieved, we go straight in with the meat. That's a fairly good strike heat. Let me just put that to one side. And we give that a stir. And we're just really stirring to brown the meat off. So that's over a fairly high heat, and we just stir and keep that going until the meat starts to brown. At this stage I like to add the onions as well, so some finely chopped onions this time. They're just going to give it some nice flavour in the stock. The principal flavour in the steak and kidney pie comes from the steak itself and the kidney, as the name would suggest, but we still need some onion in it just to get it all, get those flavours popping really. And so we get that going. Give it a stir, and I'll keep doing that for a couple of minutes until all the meat's nice and brown. Alright, as soon as your meat's nice and brown, what we do, and before it starts to burn on the bottom, is I'm going to strain in that lovely bone stock. You can use a beef stock cube or whatever you like, and you want to bring it up to, that's absolutely just perfect because it's just up to the level of the meat. We don't want too much, at this point we don't want too much liquid in it because we're making a pie filling, we're not making a stew or a soup. So we just bring it up to that level. Now all we do is bring it up to the boil, which shouldn't take long because I put in boiled stock, and then we simmer it for around about an hour, hour and a half until the meat is tender. Alright, I've tested the meat, and I don't want it completely tender. I want it to the point where I know that in sort of 15 to 20 minutes it's going to be nice and tender. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to add a little bit more of this flour to the kidneys, and I'll just dust those over, get them thoroughly dusted before I drop them into the meat. Kidneys take much less time to cook than the meat does. So I now drop those in. That's also a way of introducing the flour into the sauce to thicken it. So I'll stir that in. And it starts to thicken immediately. And what I do now is I put the lid on and carry on simmering it for another 15 to 20 minutes. Alright, I'm just oiling up my pie tins now and making sure that the oil gets right out to the lip. I'm just using a bit of kitchen paper. You can use a brush if you're posh. Okay, that's that. So they're all ready. I'll stack those and put those out of the way. And now, first of all, I'm going to take, for the base, I'm going to use the shortcrust pastry. So I'm using pre-rolled shortcrust pastry because I'm lazy, and they make it better than I do. So I'm going to take one of these, and one of these will do 2 pie tins. So I'm going to cut that in half, and then take one of my pie tins, and just as with the other pies I've done, there are some other pies on my channel which I shall link where am I? Up here somewhere. And lift that up and push it in to make sure there are no air pockets underneath it, and stretch it out to the bottom. There we go. And that sits like that. And I'm going to now do all the rest and have them ready. Alright, all my pie dishes are lined now, and now we're going to have a quick look at the meat and see that that's going on. Alright, my pie filling is ready, and I've tasted it, seasoned it up, and it's good to go. So now comes to filling the actual pies themselves. And make sure you fill the pies generously. Because there's nothing worse than biting into a pie that hasn't got enough filling in it. So there we go, plenty of filling in each pie. And I'll just fill the other 2, and then we'll show you about the lids. Alright, that's the pie casings filled. Be careful not to come up too high with the gravy, because as it heats up that will bubble up and try and come out. So what I'm going to do now is just brush around the edge of these pies with a bit of milk to help form a seal. Right, now all we'll have to do is skillfully unwrap and unroll the pre-prepared puff pastry lids. So I think what I'll do is I'll clear the decks and then I'll show you one of those as I do it. Okay, now we take a lid of puff pastry and drape it over the top, making sure it makes firm contact along the edge. And to that end I like to go around it with a fork, much as I did with the other ones, and then just engage the tines of the fork around the lid of the pie dish to form a nice decorated edge like that. Looks rather attractive. And then the last thing we do is we hold the whole pie up like this and then just run down it with the back of a knife. And let me show you that closer. And then take off the excess. We need to put an air hole in the top, and I like to just put a couple of air holes in the top of the pie. And that one is now, with just another brush of milk, that will be ready for the oven. So give that a brush of milk, and that goes into 180 degree oven, which is about 350 Fahrenheit. That goes in to 180 degree oven for around about 40 minutes. Give that, just make sure the air holes are good, and then that can go in. I'll just finish my other 4 pies now, 2 of which I'm going to stick straight in the freezer, because you can take it like that frozen and then cook from frozen in the oven. From frozen you're going to want to have it about 180 degrees Celsius or 350 Fahrenheit for about an hour, and it should come up nice. But keep your eye on it, just make sure the pie crust looks good, because everything inside it's cooked, but as soon as the pie crust looks ready, the whole pie is going to be ready. So it's not that hard to do. Alright, let's have a look at this and see how these turned out. Oh yes. Well, I think that looks rather good. And let me just shut the oven door for a second. And for the reveal, I'm just going to cut into one of those pies for you. Okay, let's just cut in and across there. And let's see if we can lift that away from there for you. Oh, it's hot. But then it's been in a rather hot place, so we shouldn't be amazed at that. Let's separate it from there and open that up so you can see inside. Oh yeah. So there you go. There's the steak, there's the kidney, just the right amount of gravy. I'm going to let that cool off for a few seconds before I throw that down my neck. And my brother's standing just off my shoulder, dribbling out of the corners of his mouth. Alright, thanks for watching.